certain amount of ability to strike. They only have either the ability to fire off of a reduced launch capability, what they're actually going to shoot at. And at this point in time, they probably are looking at it in terms of, wow, we're not going to be able to make that proportionate response a reality anytime soon. But we do need to be able to save face for our country before we come back to the negotiating table.
So as Carol mentioned, the president also making a statement about Israel. Perhaps Iran can proceed with peace and harmony in the region, and I will enthusiastically encourage Israel to do the same. The question I have for you is the ball in Israel's court right now? This seems to be what Israel wanted when it came to U.S. involvement. Is that sufficient in Israel's view? Because we saw the attacks continue even after.
No, we did, but I think that part of the reason there is we do not have positive confirmation from the battle damage assessment based off of Natanz, Isfahan, and Fordo, right? We have not seen a positive confirmation that those facilities were destroyed. So if there's an independent assessment that says all three were completely destroyed, and they feel confident in the intelligence collection of whatever their near nuclear capability or their near missile facility perspective, I think at this point in time, Israel is just wanting to make sure that they have positive confirmation that this is a done deal. We had talked about unconditional surrender. We had looked at it from a standpoint is they don't want to have to come back and do this again in a year from now, 2 years or 3 years from now. They don't want to see a buildup of nuclear fissile material in any location. And I think that the targeted strikes have shown that. They've kept very, very surgical on what they're doing because that is the point that they're truly driving home. And so it's a question is whether or not that threshold's been reached by Israeli leadership.
Wayne, will we ever know? Will we get that independent analysis to really understand if the nuclear facilities have been obliterated? Like, will we ever really know?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think if you allow the IAEA and others to go in there and do that independent assessment, then sure. As a former intelligence analyst for the Army, and you're looking at even some of the highest fidelity satellite imagery and all that, you're talking about a facility that's 300 feet under the ground. And no matter what you've done to the surface, it's not as if you have the ability to fly directly in there with a drone at eye level and be able to look around, right? So I think from that confirmation perspective, it's going to be a lot of the intelligence community across Israel, the U.S. and allies to be able to say what is in there, what's the chatter that's going on across the signals intelligence side, what's going on the human intelligence side, from sources network going, no, it's really gone, or other people saying, no, that something has survived, and that may drive Israel to continue this.
Well, it brings up a good point, and something that Carol and I have been talking about a lot today, which is, what do we know about the enriched uranium, where it is, and what's next if it indeed is no longer or wasn't even at one of these facilities when they were bombed?
No, that's going to be a big piece of it, right? When you look at going all the way back to 3.7% enriched uranium all the way into the 60s from a percentage perspective, and then trying to say, okay, was it all there? That is an area where I think that might be, if they continue down this path right now of continuing their strikes, the airstrikes against those facilities, they may still be going off of classified intelligence where they do have some leads that could go to where that material is. But I think some lessons learned obviously have been made since early 2000s in terms of being able to jump in and try and put ground forces and all that. I don't think anybody's trying to go down that path. I think it's one of the reasons you're seeing a lot more in terms of airstrike capability than you do anything else from that perspective. It looks a lot more like Gulf War warfare than it does Operation Iraqi Freedom in the early 2000s.
Hey, so we are Bloomberg, so forgive me that I go there, but I'm just thinking about what this shows me is that, I mean, we just are going to continue to see everybody spending on defense because you just don't know kind of where things are going to break out. And it just feels like we are in a more geopolitically tense world going forward. That's an understatement, but is that fair?
No, that's absolutely fair. When you look at even NATO trying to come up to 5% GDP defense spending across partners, you are seeing that people are trying to rise, but a lot of the countries don't have the room to be able to do it. So it is a pledge that's being made, but the proof's going to be in the pudding in terms of how much money that are actually able to put towards that. really you're looking at about a 3.5% of the hard defense spending, and then the other 1.5% is almost infrastructure related, transportation. There's a lot of categories that kind of fit underneath that. But as you're mentioning, I think that the defense primes, I think Boeing, Raytheon, and Lockheed had really big days over the weekend. If you think about it, right? F-18s, F-15s, in the EA-18 Growler, electronic warfare. Those three from Boeing, as well as the massive ordnance penetrator.
We're going to talk more about those in just a minute. Wayne, appreciate your time. Bloomberg Intelligence's Wayne Sanders.
.421 on Wall Street. I'm Amy Morris. This Bloomberg Business Flash is brought to you by Oracle. Attention growing businesses. Oracle is offering to cut your current cloud bill in half if you move to Oracle Cloud Infrastructure for new U.S. customers with minimum financial commitment. See if your company qualifies at oracle.com/Bloomberg. Oil prices plummeted as Iran's retaliatory strikes on a U.S. airbase in Qatar were less severe than investors feared. That also pushed stocks higher. We bring you the closing numbers each day here at Bloomberg. A big drop for oil. Both WTI and Brent crude down more than 8.5%. Ooh, look at NYMEX crude oil now. WTI down nearly 9%. Brent crude trading around $70 a barrel. WTI around $67 a barrel. S&P 500 gained 57 points. NASDAQ gained 184. The Dow up 375 points. 10-year Treasury yield 4.34%. The 2-year yield at 3.85%. Gold about 0.1% for higher trading, now at $33.90 per ounce. For on-demand news 24 hours a day, subscribe to Bloomberg News Now wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Amy Morris. That's the Bloomberg Business Flash. Let's go back to Bloomberg Business Week Daily with Carol Masser and Tim Stenovec.
All right, Amy Morris, so appreciate it. Just want to throw one more into that. KB Home just down, actually was down about 2%, now just down about 0.4% in the aftermarket. The company cutting its housing revenue guidance for the full year, the guidance missing the average analyst estimate. So we'll keep an eye on that in the aftermarket.
Well, on Saturday afternoon, when news broke that B-2 bombers, these are the only jets that are capable of deploying those 30,000-pound bunker-busting munitions, were heading west from their base in Missouri across the Pacific. I spoke to my dad on the phone. He's an aviation enthusiast. He grew up on Air Force bases. And we were both kind of puzzled. Like, why would bombers be heading west in order to mobilize for a strike on Iran? It seemed like the wrong way. Well, it turns out, as we know now, these were decoy B-2 bombers. Well, those planes got all the attention. Another group of B-2s flew east, literally under the radar. For more on the operation, we bring in Tony Capaccio, Bloomberg News Pentagon and national security reporter. He writes about the 37-hour operation, so-called Midnight Hammer. He joins us from our Washington, D.C. bureau. We're going to get to the operation details in a second, and the planes, the aircraft that were used, the submarine, the ordnance in a minute, but I want to get to what the president said on True Social a couple hours ago. He said, the sites that we hit in Iran were totally destroyed and everyone knows it. Only the fake news would say anything different in order to try and demean as much as possible. Is that what our reporting tells us, that the sites that were hit in Iran were totally destroyed? Do we know that yet?
No, we don't know that yet. Battle damage assessment takes sometimes weeks for a measured, informed analysis. He was shooting from the hip. There's no way he would have known that. General Kane, the Joint Chiefs of Staff chairman on Sunday, was pretty measured in that, in his assessment. The president was exaggerating. There's no way he would know that. Totally obliterated. It's just off the charts wrong at this point. It may be in 2 weeks from now, but yeah, he was blowing smoke, and you know, he takes a shot at the fake media, but some of us remember the Iraq War going in, the reasons why, and all the intelligence was kind of leaning in George Bush's favor. Maybe, possibly, could be, they have it. It turns out they didn't. So there's always a measure of skepticism when somebody claims battle damage assessments were spectacular, like an hour or two after the operation. So
I was watching the press conference yesterday live, Tony, on Bloomberg Television, our special coverage, and I think I saw you in the audience at the Pentagon. Were you there?
I was there. I had a off-purple shirt in the front row, right next to Jennifer Griffin of Fox.
So you heard it straight from the horse's mouth, essentially, about the battle damage assessment.
Right. This is very nascent, though. It was like hours after the operation. He was measured. I thought his answers were good. I thought Defense Secretary Hexet, while he gave an advertisement for Trump early on, he did a good job of stage managing and fielding questions.
So, to be fair, right, like I always wonder, like, how good is really our intelligence in terms of where things are, where they are on the ground. And I also do think about, Tony, what's going on behind the scenes, because nobody wants nuclear material floating out in the atmosphere. And so I just wonder, again, going to kind of the orchestration of the moves that we are seeing, this fine dance, you know, Israel, Iran, the U.S., Iran back in Qatar. So I don't know, how are you looking at how all of this has kind of been carried out?
Well, it's been carried out fairly flawlessly in terms of the mechanics of command and control in a combined operation. Your question's a good one, but I think the weaponeering was informed greatly by Israeli intelligence in terms of their assessment of what their weapons could do and how deeply buried the hardcore nuclear material, the enriched uranium material was. And that had to all be factored into the way the U.S. calibrated our bomb drops in terms of the GPS coordinates, the aim points, how deep they were going to go. I mean, the science of weaponeering, while it's a black art, is pretty precise within the Pentagon. This is one thing they do pretty well, at least knowing where their weapons go. Thank goodness for GPS.
Yeah, absolutely, right? What I wonder is how much was the U.S. military possibly willing to take the risk that they might hit a nuclear facility and that there might be, uranium or, nuclear, unleashed into the atmosphere? Like, I'm just curious how good the intel was that they knew exactly what they were doing.
In this case, I think the intel was pretty good. I mean, one indication, the Isfahan facility was not hit by massive ordnance penetrators. It apparently has more sensitive nuclear materials in there, and I'm not going to act like I'm a total expert on this, but it was struck by Tomahawk cruise missiles fired from the Arabian Sea, from the submarine with the Carl Vinson group. Those don't penetrate deeply, but my assessment is that they at least followed damage caused by Israeli weapons. They didn't go as deep, but they caused damage at that facility that could have been more significant in terms of a release of nuclear materials. Again, I don't want to overplay what I know, but that's my impression.
Okay.
Tony, the GBU-57s, the massive ordnance penetrator bombs that have the first time they've ever been used in combat, that were dropped on Fordo and other areas, 14 of them. Do you know how many the U.S. actually has of these? I've seen reporting that indicate that only 20 of these existed, but I understand this stuff is obviously classified. What do we know?
Yeah, it's a handful in the 20s, maybe mid-20s. I've been writing about this bomb for quite a number of years, and it's very, very classified. In fact, I've got some of the emails that were leaked to me about people not wanting to talk to me about the bomb. But interesting enough, there's a ammunition facility in Oklahoma, McAllister Ammunition Base. They make Army 155 rounds. Well, they're being retooled this year to help build more of these MOPs at a more rapid pace so that we can build up our inventories. So deep in the heart of Oklahoma, I'm sure they're working overtime to pull together the barrels that will be filled by Boeing in the coming months to replenish the supply.
What is considered a fully replenished supply?
I'm thinking in the 20s there, 20s, 30s.
Okay.
There's not like hundreds of these things.
Hey, one thing that was puzzling to me also was why the B-2s were or are right now based in Missouri rather than at Diego Garcia. The trips wouldn't have been as long. And why didn't they land at Diego Garcia? Why did they go all the way back to Missouri?
The whole landing sequence there, they would have been spotted there at Diego Garcia. The whole point of this was to show the long arm of the United States. Landing, they could have done that, but then there would have been pictures of it. There would have been more operational security issues. I think the brilliance of this one and this aspect of it was the feint to the west, while the B-2s that actually hit Iran, they took off at like midnight Saturday morning. The stories about the B-2s going west start breaking about 11:30 a.m. Eastern time Saturday. So this was their version, the Air Force's version of Operation Mincemeat in the Sky.
Yeah.
You guys are off Broadway, so you know the play.
Yeah, well, how do you fly 6 or 12 of these from Whiteman in Missouri at midnight without people around the airport, plane spotters, realizing this is happening?
There's no planes. This is an isolated base. They're not like sitting in their cars waiting for these things to fly off. This is our crown jewel bomber.
And online, and they can't be tracked online because they don't send out the signal that is being tracked. That's
right.
Irrespective of the radar.
The point here is that these plane trackers, they were fooled. The crews on those bombers going west were talking. They wanted to be spotted. They wanted to be detected. That's all part of the mincemeat ruse in this case. Going east, the bombers were doing their thing. They were being radio silent, and so nobody could pick them up. I mean, it was a pretty smart move on the Air Force's part.
You know, I don't know whether I'm just thinking a lot about the U.S. military, the military parade that President Trump had on his birthday, and I'm just thinking about what just happened over the weekend. What is it that kind of, I think, U.S. citizens need to understand about U.S. military and our capabilities?
Well, the capabilities that you spend like $160 billion a year on procurement often work, while the optics of the president and his parade are, disheartening to many. The weapons that we have actually have been working pretty well in the last few years. Over the last, you can fight about the war, you can argue about the war, the cause, but the hardware has been working well. The B-2, you may remember, 20 some odd years ago, it was reviled on the myth that it can't fly in the rain, it can't do an operation in the rain. Well, the Air Force debunked that. And, it's a $2 billion bomber. It was criticized at the time. Every operation it's been involved in, though, it's been pretty darn effective.
It's perhaps going to continue to be in service until the 2030s, but it's supposed to be replaced by the B-21 Raider, which had its first flight in November of 2023. How close is this to replacing the capabilities of the B-2? And what are the differences?
The main difference with the B-21, it's going to be able to control drones, basically. It's going to have wingmen. It's going to be able to have unmanned wingmen. That's a big difference. Okay. It's stealthier. I mean, the B-2 is decades old. Its skin has to be highly touched up. It has a lot of problems with skins, with the blisters and stealthy materials, low observable materials, maintaining that. The B-21s is a quantum leap better than that, and it's going to be able to carry more ordnance than the B-2. But it's going to be a quarterback in the sky. So the Air Force says. We don't know much about it because it's highly classified. Every little twist of this thing, they keep secret, except some of the broad cost figures and some of the very measured pictures they come out of flight tests.
We love getting inside your brain, man. Come on anytime. Tony Capaccio, he is Pentagon and National Security Reporter at Bloomberg News. He's there in our D.C. bureau. Do want to mention a headline crossing the Bloomberg. A divided U.S. Supreme Court lifted a judge's order that required President Trump's administration to give people 10 days notice and a chance to object before they are deported to a so-called third country. Over 3 dissents, the High Court granted an emergency request from the administration, which said the order from a Massachusetts federal judge usurped presidential authority and interfered with diplomatic efforts again. That is a win for the Trump administration. All right, you are listening and watching Bloomberg Business Week Daily. Carol Master, Tim Stanovic. When we come back, we're going to shift gears a little bit. Some business news and a company you know really well. It was a best performer in today's session. That's next.
It's 4:40 on Wall Street. I'm Amy Morris. Stocks rose, oil prices fell. The S&P 500 gained, about 1% following Iran's retaliatory strikes on a U.S. airbase in Qatar, being seen as symbolic, not triggering necessarily any broader economic fallout. We do bring you closing numbers each day here at Bloomberg. A big drop for oil, both WTI and Brent crude down more than 8.5%. Brent crude now trading around $70 a barrel, WTI around $67 a barrel. S&P gaining 57 points, NASDAQ gained 184 points. The Dow up 375 points. 10-year Treasury yield at 4.34%. The 2-year yield at 3.85%. KB Home cut its housing revenue guidance for the full year. That guidance missed the average analyst estimate. Shares of KBH down nearly 2% in the post-market. Chewy shares down 3.1% now in the post-market. The pet product retailer announced a $1 billion public offering. Chewy backer BC Partners looking to sell $1 billion in Chewy shares. Tesla rolled out its long-awaited robo-taxi service to a handful of users following almost a decade of hype from Elon Musk. And Tesla managed to handpick the first riders. That means the general public still has to wait. Shares of Tesla gained 8.2% in the regular session. For on-demand news 24 hours a day, subscribe to Bloomberg News Now wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Amy Morris. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. We return now to Bloomberg Business Week Daily with Carol Masser and Tim Stenovic. There you go.
I know. It's been a hard day.
Sometimes I get my name wrong.
Listen,
Amy, to be honest.
That's true.
I
sometimes get your name wrong. I'm like, who are you? Who are we?
It happens.
Amy, thank you so much. Hey, listen, folks, we just want to mention once again that headline that crossed the Bloomberg that a divided U.S. Supreme Court lifted a judge's order that required President Trump's administration to give people 10 days notice and a chance to object before they are deported to a so-called third country. We're going to have our June Grosso of our Bloomberg Law Show come in just a moment. In the meantime, we want to get to also what was a pretty big story when it comes to the business world.
Yeah, the best performer in the S&P 500 on a percentage basis and on a points basis today, Tesla up 8.2%. This after the company rolled out its long-awaited promised driverless taxi service to a handful of riders, a modest debut for what Elon Musk sees as a transformative new business. That said, as Kara Carlson reports, some of the cars appeared to violate traffic laws during the company's first day offering paid rides, with one customer capturing footage of a left turn gone wrong and others traveling in cars that exceeded posted speed limits. Carol Carlson is a Bloomberg News EV reporter. She joins us from Austin, Texas. Austin, Kara, is where these debuted. You saw them. You were there yesterday. Tell us what happened when things didn't go according to plan.
Yeah, so I did get to see a few of the cars out and about. There was only about 10 to 20 cars out. So we actually weren't able to witness doing anything particularly concerning or askew, but we did see a lot of the early access users were live streaming pretty much every moment of their drives. So we did see a few of them post videos where they were speeding on, a few miles above the speed limit. Particularly concerning video we saw was the Tesla didn't want to turn left and going forward against traffic. No one thankfully was in the coming lane, but it did particularly drive forward in the wrong direction.
Okay, so some hiccups there. Kara, both Carol and I have spent quite a bit of time whenever we're outside of New York and we're in a place where Waymos are operating. We spend time in Waymos. I'm wondering why investors...
We're in love with Waymos.
Oh, totally.
We're just going to be full transparency.
People are asking me, why do you like Waymo so much? And I'm like, well, because I don't have to ask the driver to put down his phone and stop scrolling on Tinder or whatever he's doing.
Safer,
because it's dangerous.
Feel safer.
Anyway, that editorial bit aside, why do you think investors are so excited about this when the technology has been proven, at least ostensibly, by Waymo using a completely different type of technology?
Yeah, so this is something Tesla and Elon Musk in particular has really bet Tesla's future on. They've been saying for years this moment is coming, and they believe their approach, which is a little different than Waymo's. Waymo uses LiDAR and certain sensors, and it's a more costly approach, but Tesla argues their approach, which is mostly camera-based and AI software-based, is faster to scale up, is a better way to do it, and is most importantly to a lot of investors cheaper. So they are hoping to compete with Waymo. This is the first showdown too of where they'll be competing with Waymo. They're on a lot of the same streets as Waymo. Waymo does have a bigger service area currently, though.
How big a deal is this for Tesla? I mean, investors, it was the #1 gainer in the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ 100. So we saw Tesla shares rally in a big way today. How big a step is this for the company on something that has been promised for a long time?
You know, for investors to stay coming and actually seeing robo-taxis like actually roll out is a big deal, but I think a lot of them are going to still be watching very closely to see how fast it can scale. A lot of them, even the ones who are very excited about, you know, reaching this moment have said, well, let's see where it's at in a few weeks, in a few months, you know, as it expands areas and expands cities and opens to more people in the public.
What is the future of this for existing Tesla owners? Like, are they going to be able to use this technology in the cars that they have already, given that they're already outfitted with cameras and these software updates can be done over the air?
So Tesla owners already have access if they buy into a certain type of software called FSD or full self-driving, but it's a supervised version. So they have to be watching the whole time. It's not considered fully autonomous. They have been told by Elon Musk that at some point they will get access to this unsupervised version. And then the eventual theory is owners will actually be able to join the robotaxi network themselves. So when they're not actually driving their vehicle, they can add them to the fleet.
We'll see. Anyway, kind of excited to see all this stuff. Kara Carlson, thank you so much. Bloomberg News EV reporter joining us from Austin, Texas. Want to get back to a breaking story, and that is a divided U.S. Supreme Court lifting a judge's order that required President Trump's administration to give people 10 days notice and a chance to object before they are deported to a so-called third country.
We've got June Grosso with us. She's the host of Bloomberg Law. She joins us here in the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio. You've been poring over this, as you always do. What is the takeaway for you?
I have to, in the interest of transparency, there are so many immigration cases before the Supreme Court on the emergency docket. This one, there is no opinion in this order. There is just a dissent.
Okay.
So you have to, so I was trying to read the dissent to figure out but basically there's this controversy, and there's always been about, you know, if you have a Venezuelan here and you want to deport them, and you can deport them to Venezuela, that's no problem. And the problem is that now there are a lot of people that they want to deport, but they can't deport them to their home country because the home country is not accepting them, or for whatever reason. So a judge in Massachusetts, there was a case, I believe this is the case, where they were going to deport some people to Sudan who had no connection to that. And they said that once they got there, there was no way for them to make a living. And so a judge put a hold on that, and also said that they have to give, if they want to deport someone to a foreign country that's not their own, they have to give them 10 days notice and a chance to object. Okay. So this is now saying that, at least on this emergency basis, the Trump administration went to the court and said, no, you can't, we have to be able to do these deportations. And the court has now said, yes, you don't have to give them 10 days notice, at least temporarily, until this is decided. That's my read of what this is.
No, you're absolutely right. It was order focused on a flight of 8 men. I'm reading actually from something from NPR, from various countries, including Myanmar, Cuba, Mexico.
Right.
They were initially headed to South Sudan, ended up in an East African country of Djibouti, and so this is what this is all about. So is this a win? This is a big win for President Trump?
Well, I mean, I think
it's
a win, but I mean, there are so many other immigration cases coming through, and I laugh that the Supreme Court is going on break, because it's not going to be as a break as they've had in other years, because the emergency docket is so filled with all these different cases that they haven't resolved yet. And Thursday's supposed to be the day for the final orders. Yeah. But then the summer comes, and they've complained before this. I remember Elena Kagan saying, you know, we don't get a real break anymore. We have so much work to do over the summer. I know, crying because because you have to work over the summer.
Members of Congress don't get enough time off
exactly.
too? Okay.
Exactly.
I don't know.
I'm just saying.
I'm just saying.
But I agree with you. But anyway, you know, she's not a complainer at all. So, but I mean, also
so this continues though in the lower courts.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to continue in the First Circuit. Okay. That they have, you know, to decide. But I mean, the thing is, when you remove someone to a country that's not your own, that's, you know, that can be very dangerous. And what do you do when you're just dropped there?
Exactly, right? It's got to be jarring. This is our new world order. To be continued. June Grasso, the best, host of Bloomberg Law and Bloomberg Radio. Catch her this evening on Bloomberg Radio. All right, you are listening and watching Bloomberg Business Week Daily.
This is Bloomberg Business Week Daily with Carol Masser and Tim Stenovec on Bloomberg Radio.
All right, everybody, just a reminder, as we get ready to wrap up on this Monday, we did see stocks pretty much finish at their best levels of the session or just shy of it. But that means almost a 1% gain on the S&P 500. You did have a 1% gain on the NASDAQ 100. That reaction from Iran and its attacks on the U.S. base in Qatar, seen as kind of controlled, limited, and so that was seen as some optimism among investors that it wasn't a lot worse.
Perhaps also, just before the markets closed, a message from the president came that seemed optimistic, I think, to some investors.
I think he's hoping that diplomacy is the next step.
Yeah.
But we'll see what Israel does. I'm Carol Masser, along with Tim Stenovec. Let's get to some of the stocks on the move on this Monday. Bloomberg News earnings reporter Red Brown in the house. Cruise lines, Norwegian. What's up with that?
Yeah, cruise lines, Norwegian Cruise Line Holdings was one of those stocks that really reacted quite sharply to a lot of the news over the last 48 hours. That ticker is NCLH. They were down as much as 7.6% today before recovering like much of the market. And that
big swing, right?
It was, yeah, from quite a big swing. And these stocks have been moving around as news filters in from the Middle East. And much of this is kind of coming down to just a negative feeling towards where oil prices are going to be. Norwegian does hedge some of those prices, other cruise lines do as well. But we'll see, actually, we'll get a good reading on kind of what the demand impact of this whole situation will be tomorrow when Carnival reports in the morning. And that will give us a really nice read through into Norwegian and what their customers are feeling, what they're hearing from some of their partners, things like that. There is a feeling that Norwegian might be the most exposed to any kind of downturn within demand, just they're the most premium within the three big names in ocean cruising. So yeah, we'll get a lot more information tomorrow, hopefully.
Was there an actual downgrade this morning?
There was also an analyst downgrade as well, which I think is also not helping Norwegian. I think it was a downgrade from buy to a hold, just kind of feeling like, best price, but the company is down, I think, around 29% this year. So not having the best year in general, but that's after triple-digit gains over the last 2 or 3. So.
Big reveal, is it Constellation Energy
I was
or
going to say something about Norwegian.
Oh, sorry, okay.
There's a preemptive
Forget
drum
that I
roll,
spoke.
Carol.
So what are you going to say?
Did part of today's activity have to do with concern about just people traveling? Because we did see airline stocks move lower, and then they moved higher later when oil prices went down, and also when it seemed like that was an isolated incident on that American base in Qatar.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I think we always see this move whenever there is a little bit of geopolitical risk in general. These companies are all out of that region. They moved out after 2023, October 7th. But I think still, if you're a consumer and you're thinking about your discretionary budget, and if there's a potential for a wider conflict, I think that does raise a lot of questions. One thing the cruises do have to their benefit that the airlines might not have is people book really far in advance. But again, if you're feeling uncertain and unsafe about traveling, maybe you second guess whether or not you actually go through with that trip. Maybe you spend a little less on board, things like that. So
yeah, we have had the U.S., I think, and other countries also, but the U.S. urging travelers to be careful, like when overseas. So we have seen some cautionary words from the U.S. All right, can I do the drum roll, please?
Please.
Okay, is it Constellation Energy or Constellation Brands? Ticker, please.
It is CEG, Constellation Energy. So I think someone owes somebody $5. But
Pay
shares.
up, Stanovic.
Wait, no, you pay to me.
I know.
Okay.
All right, go ahead, Red.
Yeah, sorry. Shares are up around, we're up around 3.4% today. This is a utility company. They have 3 nuclear energy plants in New York State. So shares are moving off of news that the governor here, Kathy Hochul, is exploring another plant within the state. It's pretty interesting to me. This is a utility company and kind of synonymous with boring, just regular paying dividends. But this stock's up 40% this year off of a lot of good news around nuclear power. Kind of at the center of this refurbished image that nuclear is getting, following Meta also announcing that they'll be doing a big deal with Constellation.
Yeah, they're all the big hyperscalers are lining up with these utilities. That stock almost doubled last year. It was up 91%.
Yeah.
I mean, it has just been on a tear, and it really is that AI play right in the power demands.
Yeah,
to some extent.
Yeah, it's tech and now politicians all kind of getting behind nuclear power after years of not.
Yeah. I mean, we had Indian Point here, just outside of New York City. You go up the Hudson. For years, that was an operating nuclear power plant. No longer. There was a lot of pushback.
Yep.
In the 2000s, in the 90s, to nuclear power. And I think a lot of people would say it was I don't want to say unwarranted, but I want to say maybe it was maybe there are those now who say those should have been kept open.
Wasn't it the Indian power plant? My husband and I were talking about this weekend. Wasn't it used to water would come down to power, hydro, and then it was used to kind of push the water back up? I got to check. I got to Google, so don't quote me on that. Don't get me in trouble. Okay, where do you want to go?
You and your husband have very intellectual conversations over the weekend.
We kind of are.
Yeah, that's nice.
You can say so yourself, Carol. All right, go ahead, Red Brown.
Yeah, well, something that maybe a little less intellectual would be cosmetics.
Don't mess with makeup. Don't mess with it,
I knew
Red
what I was
Brown.
doing there.
All right, what do you got?
We have Estee Lauder. That ticker is just EL. Shares finished up around 5% today, and that was off of the Deutsche Bank analysts upgrading their rating for the stock. And that's actually maybe a little bit counterintuitive. The reasoning behind the upgrade was because of the company's efforts to diversify away from China, which for so long has been so important for these discretionary companies. As the middle class in China has grown, discretionary budgets have grown alongside that. But now, just kind of, I think the overexposure within that, the pendulum maybe has swung too far. So Estee Lauder is really making an effort to kind of, make sure they're well exposed to all of Asia, well exposed to Europe still, things like that. And yeah, it's all systems go, I guess, for Estee Lauder.
Some big moves today. Good stuff, as always. Our own Red Brown there with some of the stock movers. Check out that podcast, Stock Movers, on Apple, Spotify, or anywhere you get your